I really want to encourage you to check out his books. You'll learn a wealth of information. It's just astonishing. Now, Dr. Blaylock, you, as a neurosurgeon, you are, of course, well informed about the function and structure of the brain, and yet I'm sure you often find yourself either arguing with or debating with some sort of MSG pusher who says things like, it's perfectly safe, it doesn't affect brain function at all. I mean, is that a common piece of feedback that you hear from the industry?
Well, not anymore. In the beginning, I did. When I first started giving lectures and the book first came out, I did an interview with the Chicago Tribune, and I pointed out all these different dangers, and then they had the representative of the company that makes the product come back after me and say, well, it doesn't enter the brain because of the blood-brain barrier. And I'd already discussed that with the reporter, that in fact there's compelling evidence and now absolute proof that it does pass the barrier. And that there's many tissues in the body that have glutamate receptors. Virtually every cell in your body has glutamate receptors, and there's no barrier. So now they know that I've accumulated so much powerful evidence, they never try to confront me directly, or if they know I've been to an audience, they never try to come back and defend themselves, because there's no defense. All the evidence is on my side.
They just hope people don't pay attention to your message.
Exactly. That's right. Well, it was originally added to food during wartime, to the sea rations and to the Japanese rations for the soldiers to increase taste, to stimulate taste. And they had discovered long ago, if you add a little bit of monosodium glutamate, it stimulates certain cells in the tongue to make food taste very good. So you could take a very bad tasting food, particularly canned foods, that have that tinny type taste in it, metallic taste, and you put MSG in it, it just tastes scrumptious. Well, all the food manufacturers discovered this as they were introduced to it by the military. And so all the major food manufacturers started adding MSG to food, including baby food.
Right.
So up until 1970, it was placed in the baby foods itself. And then when Dr. John Olding, a neuroscientist, discovered this toxicity to the brain and the serious implications of that toxicity, that's when we started getting a little bit more attention to it. Now, for our symptoms, of course, the first group of symptoms that came to the public's attention was the MSG syndrome, in which people would have flushing of their face and heart palpitations and sometimes pains going down their arms, and even episodes of GI discomfort and diarrhea. Well, those are the obvious symptoms. What was discovered after that, in fact, that there's silent damage to the brain in which there's very few symptoms. But over time, we see destruction of major important areas of the brain, things that can cause Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, ALS, and that if you have these diseases, it make them progress much faster.
Now, as a neurosurgeon, have you ever actually seen brains that you know those tissues have been damaged by MSG? Is it something that's visible when you're actually looking at a living brain, or is it not visible?
Well, it's not visible to the naked eye. You're going to have to look under a microscope to see it. But you know there's certain areas of the brain that are very sensitive. For instance, the hypothalamus. There's a nucleus in the hypothalamus called the arcuate nucleus that controls your energy supply. That's where leptin receptors are located, and growth hormone. And it is the most sensitive place in the entire brain. Well, it's just virtually wiped out by high doses of MSG. We know there's a lot of damage to that nucleus, and there's good evidence that this obesity epidemic is caused by damage to that nucleus by the large amount of MSG put in food. The Germans knew this. The German research scientists are writing about this regularly. It's just that in America, they don't want to talk about it because of the enormous wealth.
Yeah, isn't it extraordinary? The food lobby has so much influence in Washington that they're able to keep the FDA off of this issue, or the USDA off of this issue. And it's not just MSG. They've been able to put sodium nitrite in processed meats, for example, to the point where today, if you go buy beef jerky, you look at the ingredients, it's got both MSG and sodium nitrite in it. It's like a double dose of a toxic chemical cocktail. It's amazing.
Well, if you look at a lot of processed foods, which you'll see, they do contain multiple toxins and multiple forms of glutamate. It's excitotoxin. So I refer to them, rather than MSG, I refer to it as excitotoxic food additive. And they put it in virtually everything, every processed food. And those that don't put it in there have trouble selling their food because they can't get the taste hyped up enough to be able to sell it.
You know, that's a good point, Dr. Blaylock. I also have noticed, because I'm very sensitive to MSG, and I have been for as long as I can remember, decades. Causes severe migraine headaches and face flushing and things like that. So I know if I've hit some MSG, I've learned to look for it on labels. And I found that, of course, the food companies hide it under all these different names. And my pet peeve name today is yeast extract, because it's used by many of the so-called natural food companies and even the vegetarian foods. They're loaded with yeast extract. Can you talk about yeast extract and other hidden names for a minute?
Yeah, when I first spoke on this issue in Chicago at a convention, one of the chief manufacturers of processed foods came up and told me, he said, if you convince everybody of the toxicity of this, we'll just change the name. We're going to get it in the food one way or another. So I told him, well, I'm going to tell everybody the story of our conversation. And so I do. I repeat this story because it's very important. And the government allows them, if it's less than 99% pure MSG, they can call it anything they want to. Autolyzed yeast, caseinate, carrageenan, natural flavoring, vegetable extract, protein concentrate, soy isolate. The names just go on and on and on and on. And they're very benign sound, like natural flavoring. Well, people think that's natural. Or it'll say a hydrolyzed protein, a plant protein. Well, people think that's natural. And that's why you see it in so many of these natural foods, these natural food stores.
Yeah,